What's up, it's your boy 50 Cent. FightFan.com in the house. It's going down right here.
All right, welcome to the FightFan.com podcast. We are post-fight here after the Deontay Wilder-Tyson Fury heavyweight title fight from last night. We're recording Sunday. Some quick housekeeping. FightFan.com has been down for some time. Real life has gotten in the way for both Joe Bruiser and myself, Ace Freeman. But we love the sport, and we're back when we can. Great fight last night, so we just wanted to touch base and put out this podcast. So Joe Bruiser is on the line with me, Ace Freeman, and we actually have not talked about this fight yet, so I have no idea what Joe thought and vice versa. I'm just going to start out by saying I thought it was a great fight, but the most glaring thing that stuck out for me is I thought it was a clear win for Tyson Fury. I'm kind of past the point where I'm surprised at the controversy with scores now, but I had it 8-4 for Fury and thought that was being generous to Wilder. Joe, do you want to give your thoughts on that and what you thought?
Yeah, I mean, watching it live, I thought that Fury was in control for most of the fight. Like, I thought he was fighting his fight. He was doing, I mean, it's kind of what I expected. I knew that Wilder was not going to outbox him. But I mean, like, even though some of the rounds were maybe they weren't completely, dominant, I thought, much like against Klitschko, that I gave Fury all the rounds that he didn't get knocked down in. So I think I had a 10-2. I could see, like you said, I could see 9-3 or 8-4. But I mean, after that, I don't really see how you come up with a score that has Wilder definitely not winning. I mean, I don't know how you see a score that has Wilder winning, and the draw was a tough one. Although, having said that, when the fight was over, just knowing how it was, where it was, and all that sort of stuff, I was kind of prepared for anything. And I guess, unfortunately, with the state of boxing, I was not surprised at all that that's the kind of scores we got out of the judges. I mean, that just seems to be what happens in these kind of fights sometimes.
Yeah, I've moved past the point of outrage with scores like that, and to me, the biggest thing that stuck out was I just thought, I'll admit that going in, with the layoff that Tyson Fury had, with the personal problems, gaining all that weight and coming back, I really felt like Deontay Wilder was going to take this fight just with I thought his hands would be too quick and that he'd end up catching Fury and putting his punches together. But, it was just pretty remarkable, first and foremost, how Fury was able to sort of find that rhythm. The head movement was amazing. I just thought the way that he used the head and feints, he kind of reminded me of a vintage 30s Muhammad Ali with the dancing and the razzle-dazzle. Like, he just put it together round after round.
Yeah, I mean, where I was sitting with the people I was watching with, I mean, that was pretty apparent. Like, I don't think Tyson Fury's ever going to win awards for having the most beautiful style to watch or anything. But, I mean, if you know anything about boxing and what he's doing, he's tremendously effective. He knows all the things to do. It's a little bit awkward looking, but I mean, he knows how to get his punches off. He knows how to control distance. He knows how to move his head. He can stay out of danger. He looks really relaxed. Like,
I just thought that it sort of looked like he wasn't exactly sure going in, how he was going to do. And as each round went by, I thought he was getting a little bit more confident. And, by the time we got to 5 or 6, he really started to seem like he had it in him, he had it figured out, and that he was in there, and that he was taking the shots. And I mean, we saw the punch stats at the end, and it was really, the numbers were down for Wilder from some of his other fights. So it was pretty clear that what Fury was doing at his size and his reach was really effective. And when he found that rhythm, I thought he got more and more confident as each round went by.
Well, yeah, and then that's the one thing. I mean, the punch stats are interesting because watching the fight, you kind of got the sense that there was more activity than the punch stats show. I don't know. I mean, I guess they're big guys and they cover a lot of ground and that sort of stuff. Well, seeing the totals, I was like, wow, normally with those kinds of totals, you would think that the fight was a bit of a stinker. Although watching it live, I guess just with the drama and sort of tension that was going on, it didn't really feel like a dud to me. It felt like it was a pretty good fight. I mean, I would say it was a barn burner, but it was, I thought it was a good amount of action and a competitive fight that way.
Well, the knockdowns were pretty interesting, and they added some drama to the fight for sure, because otherwise I thought Fury was completely running away with it. It kind of sucks a little bit in that even with the knockdowns, I don't think that was enough to sway the fight. But to talk about them for a minute in terms of the drama it brought, The first one was in the 9th round, and I remember that well, thinking at the time that I thought Wilder probably landed I think it was a left hook that started the sequence that I would say was about a 7 out of 10 as far as Wilder power shots go. And I think what happened is he landed a second shot in there that was a 7 out of 10, and it put Fury down. So I don't think that he was out separated from his senses. I think he gathered himself and got up pretty good. And then I thought one tactic that he used sort of at that point and over the championship rounds that was maybe a little bit overlooked was that tactic that Lennox Lewis used against Mike Tyson when they fought a while back, and that Wilder was getting a little bit tired already, and Fury utilized the clinch a little bit better and started putting his weight on Wilder, and I think that really started to tire him out. And then we get to the 12th round where I think I saw the British broadcast, but I was flipping over to the Showtime and saw that they had Wilder behind on points, and so that made for that dramatic last round. And then I mentioned the shots in the 9th were 7 out of 10s. I'd say that two-piece combo that he landed in the 12th was probably an 8.5 to a 9 out of 10. And, Fury's head looked like it hit the canvas, and he looked like he wasn't there for a second. And, like we talk, I'd kind of like to mention the story that your brother told us that one time when someone's laying there like that. It was when Nonito Donaire knocked down from Fernando Montiel. And if you remember that left hook, it looked like his skull kind of reverberated inside his head. He hit the canvas and he did that, involuntary foot twitch like a dog that's having a dream, and he was out cold. And somehow his body stood up at the count of 8, and we were flabbergasted and said, how did he possibly get up from that? And your brother said he didn't. Mexico did. And so when we talk about last night, looking at what Fury said after the fight, how did Fury get up from that? I think it's safe to say he didn't, that Jesus got up. And I don't know if you want to call it Mexico, Jesus, whatever you want to call it. Something made him stand up, and then the fact that he came back in that 12th round, I think maybe Wilder emptied the tank a little bit. Would you say that that's fair? Why that Tyson was able to come back after that in the 12th round?
I don't know about that. I think that Wilder. I mean, here's the thing: Wilder he gets really wild when he's going to finish somebody. He throws those punches, and Tyson Fury still has pretty good fundamentals where he can counter and he can get his shots in, and I think he landed a couple when they were in the exchange when Wilder was going for it. He caught him with some sneaky punches.
He did, yeah. A right hand really drilled him in there for sure.
And it backed him off. It backed him off. And I think that the same thing in the knockdown in the 9th. I agree with you. Like he, to me, it was partially. I think he was getting a bit cute. He sort of ducked low there and was a little bit off balance, and then Wilder landed that right sort of to the side of the head, the temple area, which tends to discombobulate somebody a little bit and throw them off their balance. So he went down. I'm not sure how hurt he was there. I mean, it was definitely a knockdown, and he seemed to get up okay. And that was the one where I thought he got up and actually pretty much within 20 seconds of the knockdown was dominating the round again. I mean, he just, he actually came back really strongly from that. It's an interesting thing. Tyson Fury, obviously, I mean, we've seen him get knocked down before against Cunningham, and I think there was another fight there that he fought. I think it was a guy from out of Toronto that fought him. I think that maybe knocked him down as well. But he's been knocked down, and I don't think he's ever really been too hurt. I mean, the Cunningham one, he went down pretty hard and did a backward roll and got back up. But I mean, he's got heart, but he's got a real fighter's heart. And Wilder, over the years, especially as he stepped up the competition and maybe some adversity in fights where you just weren't sure he's going to do it. I mean, he's got tremendous heart as well. You never can count him out. So it was actually really interesting to see. Even though I thought Wilder was losing all the rounds, I didn't get the sense that he'd ever given up. He's in it right till the end, and he showed it by landing that punch in the 12th. He didn't get that sort of discouraged fighter look. I know he's probably getting a little bit tired, and like you said, Tyson's size and weight with the clinch probably played into that. I think missing a lot of shots played into that as well. I actually didn't find. I mean, I remember thinking at some point in the fight that there wasn't a lot of clinching in the fight. Maybe I don't remember in the Klitschko fight whether it felt like maybe Tyson tied him up a lot more. In this one, I don't think there was excessive clinching.
No, I don't think there was either. The only time that it was really effective clinching that I was referring to is sort of after the knockdowns. Fury utilized the clinch to sort of buy himself some time, and in those clinches, I noticed he was putting his weight on Wilder. Yeah. And Wilder had already kind of expended a lot of energy in the follow-up sequences, and then he had that weight on top of him. So I think it was a really good tactic. But the 12th round knockdown, further to what you were mentioning about, we've seen Fury get up before, but I thought he was out. I watched that sequence again this morning, and it looked like up until the count of 4, he wasn't even there. And then he just kind of snapped, his eyes sort of woke up, and he stood up. And so it was just tremendous heart that he stood up. And we don't know exactly what it is that made him stand up, like we were just saying, but the way that he got up and battled back, and you made a fair point that he landed a couple right hands. And I actually thought that Wilder looked like he was maybe ready to go in the last 30 seconds of the 12th round, whether it be from those right hands or being really tired of the combination thereof. But I think at that point, Fury kind of realized that he had the fight in the bag and didn't really, want to give Wilder any more opportunity for going for broke. But it was a very interesting ending to a dramatic fight, for sure.
Yeah, I just want to point out that when Wilder landed I think he hit him with a right, and Fury was probably already on his way going down, and Wilder came up with the left hand straight that just drove his head straight back, and his head smacked off the canvas there.
Right.
It's one of those things you see, like he's laying there, the ref's counting 3 or 4, he's not moving, he's straight on his back, his eyes are closed. You're like, is he going to even move? And you actually saw his eyes open, and his head up a little bit, and then his head went back down. You know what I mean? It was almost like he thought he was getting up, and then he wasn't. And that was the point. I was like, he's done. He's not getting up. And whatever it was, I think he actually started getting up at the count of 6 or 7. I wasn't sure he was going to make it, but he got to his feet. But you have to wonder if Wilder truly, he's looking at, he knew he knocked him down. He's looking at him not moving. And at a certain point, all that adrenaline and everything else sort of goes out like he thought he'd done it, right? And so all of a sudden there's that surge of, you kind of think the fight's over. And maybe he, maybe emotionally and everything else.
It's funny that you mention that, because if you or anyone listening has a chance, I just randomly on YouTube, I was looking through some videos to try to see the 12th round, and there's a video called Wilder Fury 12th round Wilder reaction, and it's someone zoomed in on Wilder's face while Fury was laying there being counted, and he was sort of, you could see in his face that he thought that, relief, because he thought he had it done. And it was really interesting to see his facial reaction when Fury stood up, because I wouldn't say that he was afraid, but he was definitely shocked. And I think that goes to what you're saying. It definitely played into the fact that was probably a little bit of a mental breakdown, and not breakdown, but a mental block in terms of, what do I need to do to get to take this guy out? That was probably, one of the best 2 pieces I could have thrown, and he's still coming. So.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like he would have known at that point. I mean, whether they'll admit it or not, I think they would have known that they needed something huge. He was giving it his all. He landed the punch. I mean, that's the kind of shot that puts everybody out. You know what I mean? I mean, he's countless times. Guys don't get up from that kind of thing. And I just kind of feel, like emotionally and everything else, he would have been so relieved that he got it done. That I'm not sure with the amount of time left that he was, able to sort of. Get that second wind in gear, and that there's, emotionally and everything, he just may not have been able to, he would have just been spent, I think, at that point. It would be difficult to follow up based on, it's one thing you knock somebody down, you're like, I'm going to follow up here, but I mean, it really looked like he'd done it there, right? Even when Fury's up at the count of 9, you think maybe the ref's still going to wave it off. I don't really know. I haven't seen, honestly, I haven't watched the knockdown with critical eyes. I've seen some chatter sort of online, people talking about that they thought it was a long count or whatever else. I don't really know. At the time, I was just watching the ref, and I thought he got up, by the ref's 9 count or whatever it was.
Well, the only interesting thing that I'll say about that, having watched it pretty closely again this morning, was that Fury was lucky to an extent that when he was laying there with his eyes closed at the count of 4. We have seen situations where the referee would have been within his rights to just wave it off like, oh my gosh, this guy's unconscious. But the referee actually kept counting, and then his eye opened, and then I guess I would assume there was some eye contact between Fury and the ref, who were very close at that time, and he watched him get up. It was close. I mean, I don't think it was a long count, but it was interesting if you have eyes to take a look at that a little bit closer. Full credit to Jack Reese, and the rest, as they say, is history. But I want to move us on to, we have to mention it a little bit here. So the bell rang, and then, everyone was collecting themselves. I thought at that point that it was, a clear win for Fury. I didn't think that even with the knockdowns that it put Wilder anywhere close. But, the first thing that we have to touch on, even if it's fairly briefly, is the judge's name is Alejandro Rochin, or Rochin from Mexico. And he had the fight scored 115-111 for Wilder.
He had it 7-5 for Wilder, regardless of the knockdowns. So
right.
It would have been,
Sorry, yes.
It would have been 115-113. had Wilder not scored any knockdowns, and I mean that's just atrocious. That's inexcusable. It's probably one of the worst. I put that up there with cards handed in by C.J. Ross or Adelaide Bird or whatever else, where everybody gets up in arms.
He was watching a different fight from everyone else. Is basically what happened.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what 7 rounds you're giving to Wilder there, and especially, I mean, you're giving Wilder 2 rounds in there where he scored knockdowns, where arguably without those knockdowns he was losing those rounds. You know what I mean?
Right.
I guess it doesn't really matter at the end of the day because you are counting the knockdowns, but even though I don't want to say that Wilder got embarrassed and was never in the fight or anything like that, but I just kind of felt that it was very clear round to round that Tyson Fury was doing better. He was winning those rounds. Not by, he's not, they weren't shadow rounds or anything like that, but I mean, they were clear rounds. Like sometimes you can see a fight that goes 12-0 to one guy where every round's competitive, right? I mean, that's the kind of fight it was. It wasn't necessarily that Wilder was doing nothing. It's just that Tyson Fury was doing more. And it was hard for me to find any rounds that Wilder won clearly outside of the knockdowns.
Yeah, we had to mention that because I thought it's just chalk that scorecard up to being egregious. That was an egregious scorecard. So
yeah, and you know what I don't like about those scorecards is that then the story is, the judges were terrible. Well, no, you know what? That judge was terrible. The British judge that had it, I think, was it 114, 112? I thought they'd announced it 114, 110 on the broadcast, and that didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I have it listed. It's Robert Trapper, who I believe is Canadian. 114, 112. It was the score. So
sorry, that one. So that means he had it 8 rounds to 4.
For Tyson Fury.
Yeah, for Tyson Fury.
Right.
And to me, there's probably a couple rounds in there just based on the way the fight was going that you're going to give to Wilder. So he won 2 rounds plus the 2 knockdowns. I don't think that scorecard's out to lunch. Like had Tyson Fury won 3 cards 8-4, nobody would be saying anything. They would say,
right.
Judges, right? It's that one judge's card that throws everything else up. And I think the British judge had it 113, 113. Was
right.
That right?
So that was Phil Edwards. So he would have had it 7 rounds to 5 for Fury.
He had it 7-5 for Fury with the 2 points. Even that one, I think that was to me like stretching about as far as you could go. I'm surprised it was the British judge that had it that way, and maybe there's something where he didn't want to seem biased, so he was giving Wilder some rounds, and I guess judges should be none of that stuff should affect it, but obviously it does. I mean, how do you come up with a 115-11 for Wilder? Like that's crazy, 115-111. I guess the point I was trying to make is that I felt that the other 2 scorers probably, if the one judge didn't have such a bad scorecard, and managed to see it, even if it was a bit tighter than you'd like, it would have been fine.
So what I was saying though is, scoring aside, I felt that we could kind of look back on that fight, and that I'm hoping that a lot in the boxing community will just be able to look at it pragmatically. We just like at the top of the heavyweight picture, we just saw Tyson Fury bedazzle Deontay Wilder the same way that he did Klitschko, pretty much. I mean, I know there was a couple knockdowns, but those are 2 of probably the biggest heavyweight wins in the last couple years. And it was a classy performance. Fury honestly kind of reminds me of like an early 1900s John L. Sullivan type who just rolled up his sleeves and just was a purveyor of the sweet science over a really crude, wild swinging power puncher. And no disrespect for Wilder, because I'm not trying to belittle him. I thought Wilder passed a really important test when he beat Ortiz. That was really impressive. So the win, as it were, for me last night with Fury beating Wilder was a really important one. I take nothing away from Wilder and thought that was sort of an excellent win on his resume. So like between the way that he handled Wilder last night and the way that he dominated Klitschko, who at that time was at the end of a very lengthy title reign. Like, let's not forget that Tyson Fury is the linear heavyweight champion. I think it makes a very good case for Tyson Fury being the man at heavyweight right now, like the true champion. What do you think about that?
No, I would agree. I think that, like I said, scoring aside, to me, that's one of the most impressive things I've ever seen for someone who we already watched do something similar to Klitschko. And actually, I just want to say that, especially at this, I mean, like, think how much rust he's coming off, right? Like, you can see the rust coming off by round 6 or 7 or 8. He was starting to feel really good. I expect that in his next fight, he's going to be really close back to his prime form kind of thing, right? And I think he's the best heavyweight in the world. I just don't see.
Well, something that occurred to me last night when Jim Gray was doing the interviews, he asked right away if Fury was interested in the Wilder rematch, and Fury said, "I'm going to spend Christmas with my family and think it over." I know they talked about the rematch quite a bit in the aftermath, but I honestly feel like Fury can walk away from that fight and pretty much declare himself as having won it, and he'd be correct. And in theory, I think he can entertain a fight with Joshua if that suits him better. And I honestly think he's in the driver's seat as to whether or not he wants to rematch Wilder or whether or not he wants to take on AJ in a British super fight. Like, it seems to me that he's in the driver's seat and that he could pick either one of those options.
Well, but honestly, I kind of feel like I think both guys raised their stock right now, and Joshua's kind of left on the side a little bit, right? He's going to be fighting Dylan White probably next, and in a fight that nobody's really clamoring for. And I'm not quite sure where that leaves everything right now. I mean, there's three options right now. Either of these guys can fight Joshua, or they can fight a rematch. You know, those are the fights that people want to see.
So, what do you want to see right now? What would kind of clarify the picture at heavyweight right now for you? What fight would you like to see next in a perfect world?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not really sure. I think let's not like. I thought Luis Ortiz actually looked pretty good. Luis Ortiz yesterday too, and I wouldn't mind actually seeing him fight any of those three guys as well. Although I don't really know how he would fare against Fury just because of the height differential. But I think that you get any of those four guys fighting, and they're good fights. I'm not really sure I have a preference. Like, I feel like there's unfinished business all around, right? As much as Tyson Fury, I feel, won the fight yesterday, the fact that he nearly got knocked clean out raises question marks that makes a rematch interesting. Right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Can Tyson Fury improve on that performance? You know, maybe with a little bit more rust off and everything else, he can. I kind of figure that Wilder's probably learned something. He gained some great experience in this fight. You know what I mean? So I would expect that he would maybe have a bit better of a game plan coming into a rematch.
Yeah, and like I was saying at the beginning of this question, the X factor for me is that it's a natural conclusion to want to see them do it again because of the two knockdowns, Wilder and Fury. But it's a bit of an X factor that a Fury-Joshua fight in the UK could make so much money and generate so much interest that's probably a strong option as well.
Yeah, and I guess the economics of it. Here's partially why I think Tyson Fury said that he wanted to take some time off at Christmas and everything else. I think they want to see what happened here. You know, how much money this fight made. Right, they're going to wait for the numbers to all come in. It was a little bit of an X factor. It's Wilder's first fight on pay-per-view. It's Fury's really first fight, with U.S. exposure on this stage too, right? I think they're hoping that it's going to make some money, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, it creates a lot of interesting options that weren't necessarily there before. I think with Wilder being the betting favorite and Fury having been off for a few years, I think the general consensus going into that fight was that Wilder was probably going to win and set up a huge fight with Joshua. And now there's sort of a three-headed monster at the top of the heavyweight division, and there's a lot of different ways that this could play out. So I think it's pretty interesting. I think that we're going to leave it there, though. We've gone on for quite a bit here. We got quite a bit of time. So if anyone is still listening, we thank you very much.